You know, when I was a little boy, I would watch my father go out and mow the yard, and it was great to watch him. There he would be pushing this great big loud machine, and he would make stripes in the yard, and everywhere he went you could see what he had done. And then when he was finished, it was a huge accomplishment because a yard that had had all kinds of weeds and stuff growing just an hour or so before all of a sudden looked nice and calm and manicured. And I couldn't wait to be able to do that. So years passed by, and my brother, John, who's 2.5 years older than I am, he got to mow. And so I would see him go out there and push that big loud machine, and then he would be able to look back and see what he accomplished, and he actually got some money out of it too. I was pretty jealous. And then finally that day came. Finally my dad said, "Okay, Stephen, you can go out and mow." I was so excited. And so he went out and he showed me how to pull start the lawnmower and where the gas went. He showed me how to push it and how to line it up so that the lines would be straight. He showed me how to turn the mower around and what to do on the uphills and the downhills, and it was awesome. And so I got to go and mow the grass. And then the next weekend rolled around, and again, I got to mow the grass. And then some of the neighbors and people that I went to church with, they heard that I had learned this new skill, and so they called my parents up to see if I could mow their grass too. And sure enough, by the end of the summer, I was mowing like 4 or 5 yards a week. Turns out, I hate mowing. I was so excited to be able to do it when I couldn't do it, you know? I was dreaming for the day when I would get to mow. But then, when I had to mow, well, now it's not fun anymore. To this day, I still don't like mowing because it's something that I have to do. It's something that I gotta do. I don't get to mow, I got to mow, you know? Well, there's a lot of things like that, right? You remember when you got a job, maybe your first job ever, and somebody called you on the phone, or maybe you were in person and they said, "We like you, we think you'll be a perfect fit, you got the job." Awesome. And so you were so excited to be able to show up that day. You know, you sprung out of bed. Today's my first day at the office. And so you go there, and the whole way you're excited to be there, and you meet all your coworkers, and they're just great. And then you're doing your job, and it's the most interesting, fascinating stuff you've ever done. And your boss is the greatest lady you've ever met, and everything is wonderful. And then a little bit later, it turns out your coworkers, well, they're kind of rude. And that work you've got, well, it's boring and tedious. And your boss, well, she's a bit of a jerk, you know? And so then you don't get to go to work. Then you got to go to work, you know? You got to show up for that paycheck. You got to be there so that you can afford to pay the bills. You got to go. But, you know, maybe you're fortunate and you actually love what you do, and you get to go every day. But the reality is there's still some days that you got to go, right? Maybe you're not feeling all that swell. Maybe you had a tough night the night before, or maybe you're just not in the mood. There's a difference between get to and got to. I mean, when people get married, a bride and groom stand up before, and they are so happy that they get to get married. And then they got married, you know? And for some people, that got to be married is just too much to bear. Then there are some things that initially you just love doing, but like mowing the yard, it just becomes something that's nothing more than a chore. It's not something you get to do, it's something that you got to do. Well, a lot of times I think that when it comes to giving in the church, people feel like it's something they got to do. And so when the preacher gets up there and starts talking about money, they don't really like it because, let's be honest, me, a preacher, talking about money, it's something I got to do. This is not something that I get to do. Oh, what a thrill. I get to go in there, and because this is the assigned text for the week, which just happens to be the week before we vote on our budget. No, I don't plan these things. Somebody else did. And I get to talk about, I got to talk about money to people that really don't necessarily want to hear about it. But I think maybe, just maybe, it's because we got that all wrong. Because what we heard in our gospel reading was Jesus was sitting opposite the treasury, and he's just sitting there watching. Now, the way the treasury was, it was this great big brass trumpet-looking thing. And so when people put money in it, it made noise. Because back then they didn't have the paper folded money. No. It was all coins. And so when they would put these large amounts of coins, it made a lot of noise, you know. And so people are feeling pretty good about the fact that, you know, they're all rich and they come in and they put all these coins so everybody can hear the great offering that they gave. But see, it wasn't just something that they did because it made them feel good. It's something that they had to do. It was the law. You gave 10% of your harvest, 10% of your income. The first 10%, the first fruits, go to God. That's what the Bible says. That's what the Jews lived by. 10%. It was the law. And so Jesus was sitting there watching these people come and give. But then there was a widow that came, and she had 2 small copper coins, and she put them in the treasury. And those 2 small copper coins were worth about a penny. That's what it says in the Bible, right? They were worth a penny. Well, that was 2,000 years ago, and I promise you that those little widow's mites now are about worth a grain of sand. Not just next to nothing, it was basically nothing. And so then Jesus says something very surprising. He says, you see this woman here? She just put in more than anybody else. Because out of her poverty, she gave all she had. They're giving out of their abundance. They're giving out of all the stuff that they've already got. She had nothing left to live on. And she gave it. And thus she gave more. Now see, there are some troubling things about this whole passage. First of all, let's take it from the business aspect. Got to be honest with you. I sit in council meetings. I sit in finance meetings. And while the widow's gift would be all well and good, it's not going to do much, is it? We like those $10,000, $15,000 gifts. We're excited about those. So what did Jesus mean? Oh, she gave more. Because what you going to do with a penny? You know, what kind of ministry does a penny produce? And secondly, from a practical side, is that really a good idea? She gave all that she had to live on. She had nothing else left. What was she going to eat that day? Where was she going to sleep that night? That wasn't exactly a smart move, now was it? I mean, surely God wants us to take care of ourselves, right? Is Jesus really saying that He wants us to pour in every bit of our money into the offering plate so we don't have anything to live on at all? No. That's not being said here. Whew. Right? I think it's all about attitude. I think Miss Dieta hit the nail on the head. You see, the Jews that were giving, they were giving out of obligation. They were giving out of their abundance. What they already had, they weren't going to miss it. It was 10%. They didn't even count it as theirs anyway. But when she gave all she had, she didn't have to do that. It was something that she was able to do. She was able, she got to do that. It wasn't that she had to give it. She could give it. And that made all the difference. Because you see, my friends, when we get to give, when we open up that opportunity to change lives, it makes all the difference. It changes everything. I'm going to say something right now that our council members and our finance people may not be very comfortable with, but I'm going to say it anyway. If you give out of obligation, don't. Don't do it anymore. Don't give out of obligation. Don't give because you feel like you have to, because that's the rules. Because, well, it says it in the Bible, and if I don't, I'm going to get struck down. Or if I don't, the church doors are going to close. If that is your reason for giving, then stop. Because you're missing the point. Do you ever notice that we actually have the offering in the middle of the worship service? We don't just stick a bucket out back, or something like that. It's in the middle of the worship service. And the reason for that is because our offering is part of worship. It's not the seventh inning stretch that means that everything's done except for communion. No, it is part of worship. It's where we give part of ourselves to God. And when we give, it makes a difference. First of all, it makes a difference to us when we give it cheerfully. When we give it willingly and cheerfully, it changes us because we know that in some small way we are impacting the world. Did you know that every time you put $1 in the offering plate, part of that goes to disaster relief throughout this country? Did you know that every time you put $1 in the offering plate, part of that goes to Tanzania, Africa, to help them have clean water? Did you know that every time you put $1 in the offering plate, some of that goes to Newberry College, some of it goes to Lutheran, some of it goes to Camp Kynard and Coastal Retreat Center, some of it goes to the seminary where Deborah graduated from, where I graduated from, and where Katie goes. Some of it goes to help start new churches. Some of it goes to Mission Lexington to help feed people in our community. Some of it goes to keep the lights on in this building so that every single day we can have little kids running around here learning what it's like to be a good human being, learning what it's like to speak Spanish and English and to walk and talk. And every time that you put $1 in an offering plate, part of that goes so that we can gather here today. We get to do that. We have the opportunity to take part in that every single time we give. We get to do that. It's not something that we got to do, because when we got to do it, it sucks the joy out of it. You know? When it's something that we are doing out of obligation, why would you want to? Now it just feels like another bill. And I don't know about you, but I really don't like paying bills. This is not something that we got to do. It is something that we get to do. We get to do ministry. We get to impact lives in this world. You see, God has left us in charge of everything that we have. It's His. Everything we have belongs to God. And He only asks for a portion of it back. And we have the opportunity to do that. But the truth is, we don't have to. We don't have to at all. But when we do, imagine the joy. Imagine the freedom. That widow didn't have to put anything in the offering plate that day. It was her pleasure to be able to do that. It was her pleasure to be able to put that trust in God, saying, you know what, I know this is everything that I have to give, but I know that you'll take care of me. My friends, we have an opportunity every single week. We have an opportunity to change lives. But the lives that's changed first with our gifts is our own. Amen.